Over the last decade, the adventures of Harry Potter have become the epic myth of our time and the most successful film franchise of all time. And at the eye of the phenomenon was Potter himself, Daniel Radcliffe.
Expecto Patronum!
At age 11, Daniel became the face of Harry Potter after he was spotted in a BBC production of David Copperfield. And over the course of 8 Potter movies, countless bruising stunts, and some big on-screen kisses, we watched as the boy wizard became a man. So, how did he manage to stay sane in the midst of the worldwide Potter mania? Did he manage to stay sane? Well, apparently. And his parents deserve a lot of the credit. His dad quit his day job as a literary agent to shepherd his son through the madness. But it hasn't all been plain sailing for Daniel. Like many young men in his position, he has had some struggles, and then there's that question that hangs over every child actor. How do you carve out a career as an adult? Well, Daniel appears to be well on his way thanks to a string of very un-Potter-like roles. Broadway debut as a disturbed young boy in Equus, even bared all for the role, there was a horse. Last year, he earned rave reviews in the Broadway musical, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And now Daniel's back on the big screen in The Woman in Black.
Who's there?
They prey on those most in need.
Spooky. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, mate.
How was
It's
things?
very good to be here. Very good. You know, in the middle of this kind of crazy press tour, but it's all good.
You know, if you get used to promoting a certain kind of film for any length of time, then to have to get into and talk about a completely different kind of film.
Yeah.
Is it a learning curve for you?
No, it's actually great. It's kind of really good fun to be talking about something that's not Harry Potter. Is quite refreshing.
But dude, you went the other way, man, because this film. So I would like to think of myself as a professional scary movie watcher. It's sort of it's how I go to sleep to the soundtrack of The Exorcist.
Wow.
There were a couple of times.
Tubular Bells is kind of awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
It also explains why I sleep alone. But in this moment, man, there were some real creep-out scenes in here. I was like, oh, this is a scary film.
There are. I mean, as I was saying to you before, James Watkins, our director, is a real, you know, I don't want to imply that he would ever be limited to the genre of horror, but he's incredibly good at it and really understands it and knows how to scare people, knows how to freak people out.
Were you into that stuff?
Not the kind of more modern, kind of slightly gratuitous horror. I mean, I love you know, I think The Shining is one of the scariest movies ever made. Yeah. Oh, good, yeah, good. You know, The Shining, the original Straw Dogs, I haven't seen the new one, but I did think it looks very good. Yeah. Yeah, stuff like that. Not so much Scream or you know, any of the Saw movies. I couldn't watch them. Like, that would just terrify me. Of course, you're gonna, but like, you can't show people those graphic images and not expect them to be anything but upset and disturbed.
Right.
Like, that seems a little, seems a little...
Well, because in those movies, there's no real reason for hope, right? You mentioned The Shining. Kubrick had this great line about ghost stories.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The idea of ghost stories is that it means there's an afterlife.
Yes,
So
they were all inherently consoling, I think was what he said. Yeah, that was one of the things we first talked about, James and I, when we met to discuss Woman in Black, was the fact that there is... You know, because my first question to him was, OK, so Arthur goes to this house. The moment you open the door, you know he should leave. I mean, there's no... It is a haunted house. From the moment you get there, you can tell that. So I said to James, you know, why does he stay? And what James said was kind of brilliant, was that, you know, here's a man who has lost his wife. He finds himself in this house where he starts seeing what he thinks is the ghost of a dead woman. You know, curiosity would keep him there, because if he can confirm that this is a ghost that he's seeing, then there is an afterlife and he will one day be with his wife again. So yeah, it's a story about this film. Really, it is a scary film, and it's you know, you will jump and you will scream. It does all that very, very well. But it's also a film about what happens to us if we fail to move on from a loss. You know, Arthur, my character, has not moved on from his wife's death, and so has just become completely detached from the world and kind of entered a state of emotional paralysis. He can't, you know, he's not a participant in his own life.
How are you at that? How are you at that, dealing with loss?
Touch wood, I haven't had to deal with a huge amount of it. I mean, I lost my grandmother a couple of years ago, which was obviously sad, but I was mainly sad for my dad.
That's the interesting thing when you lose a grandparent. Your time to grieve is later, right?
Yeah, and because you just see your parent suddenly, you know, yeah, it's a very bizarre thing. Seeing your parent lose one of theirs is very, very strange. And then The Woman in Black, has not moved on from a wrong that was done to her in her life, and has carried that hatred and that anger with her into the afterlife, where she is trying to wreak her revenge. So yes, it's quite a good film.
I'm not sure it's as commonplace as we used to hear about, certainly through the 80s, but people who get a lot of profile when they're young, you hear an awful lot about the flame-out stories at the end.
Right, yeah.
Were you well insulated?
Yeah, I mean, I've had great people around me. You know, I've had my mum and dad.
And they're both pros. They both worked in this business, right?
Yeah, you know, my mum was a casting director and my dad was a literary agent. So, you know, she never cast anything I was in. I feel I have to say that. You know, my dad was, as I said, a literary agent, which is amazing, because now, you know, we've got these scripts coming in, and I have my dad, who was kind of famous when he was an agent for being really great with new writing. You know, I've got him as free script development, so that's, you know, that's kind of awesome. But yeah, so I had good people around me. You know, I think possibly because I was on set every day, I was the only one who was on set every day out of the cast on Potter. And the only other people that are there every day is the crew, so they were the people that I became very, very close with, right. And I think that gives you a healthy amount of humility. I think because you see how the crew talk about actors that they don't like, and you go, I don't want to be talked about like that. So yeah, I think that was probably quite informative.
What do you do at a certain point when, because you're so lucky enough to work around people who really have a good idea of how to protect you or where your career could go, when you're too young to really make those choices on your own? Now you get into your 20s. You have quite a bit of experience, and so eventually you're going to start to take your own lead in your career in a way, right?
Well, I mean, I think it started kind of with Equus, was the time that that was something I wanted to do.
You have to have a certain amount of confidence, dude, to be naked around a horse. Because,
well...
For obvious reasons, right?
Yeah, you certainly do. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the horses in our play were male, were men, not horses. That would have been bad. Kind of, would have had to blind 6 of them a night, so we would have got through them. Yeah, no, I mean, I think doing Equus was a real, you know, that was a. Looking back, I didn't know how important that was at the time, I don't think, but looking back, that's been incredibly important to me in my career, and in terms of making people sit up and go, oh, he's not, you know, he's not content to rest on his laurels, he wants to do something else, he wants to take risks and challenge himself, you know, because that's kind of what I'm all about. If I don't have a certain amount of fear going into a project, then I probably won't be very good. I need to feel, you know, that there is a genuine risk of failure for me to, I don't know, it motivates me.
But does that apply beyond your career? Does that apply in your life as well?
I don't know. It's very hard for me to draw a distinction between those two things. I mean, having worked for so long. Yeah, I mean, I think in my life, I'm actually, like, kind of, despite the appearance of hyperactivity and excitableness that I have, I'm actually I'm kind of the most laid-back person. Like, nothing really affects me.
Really?
Like, yeah, I mean, I don't get particularly, like, worried or angry. Like, in my personal life, I'm very, very chilled. Professionally, I worry.
2:30 in the morning, you're in a public place, there's alcohol flowing around, in a bar, you're probably hanging with your friends, and some guy goes, Potter! You don't know? You don't get angry then?
No, you don't get angry. The only time it becomes relatively irritating is when people are drunk and obnoxious and think they're really funny. But it's not the fact that they think they're funny, because that's fine. They are funny to their friends. That's fine. But, like, they can't expect me to still laugh. That's the thing. Like, they look at me like I am something rude for not laughing at their joke, and it's like, dude, I've been hearing those jokes for 10 years. I can't fake laughing for you.
Right.
I don't know. I wouldn't do that with my friends. I'm certainly not going to do it for you, drunk stranger.
But maybe that's a sign that you're open to them, that you treat them like you do to your friends.
Well, maybe. I mean, you know, I think you have to. I think when you're in a big franchise and you're very well known and you've done very well financially out of it, it's time to kind of kick back and have a sense of humor about yourself.
Right.
Like, you're gonna. Your people are gonna, people are gonna find it funny to call you out and stuff in the street.
There was a moment, man, when because I watched the films you've done, liked the choices, heard about Equus, liked all that, then saw this, and this took you to the next level. Look at this clip here.
Thanks for covering my arse earlier. The offer still stands.
What offer?
Yeah.
Just gonna go and get a drink. Does anybody want anything?
I'll have a cup of tea.
Yeah, get me a bourbon, would you, babe? When she comes back, right, make some excuse and leave us alone, will you?
What you got planned? You've unravelled it.
Ready for action. Let's hope it's big enough.
So that's good.
Doesn't get much better.
That's one of the greatest comedy series of all time.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I still get people coming up to me now. It's like 5 years later now, going, "Loved you on Extras."
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It's the only club I've ever said yes to without reading the script. Ricky got in contact with me and said, you know, I want you to play sort of a warped version of what people think you are. And that, for me, was incredibly appealing because I do, you know, particularly at that age, whenever I walked into a room, I assumed people were expecting me to be very unpleasant. And so you kind of, to constantly feel that you're coming up against that perception and then to have somebody offer you the chance to send that up completely was awesome. I mean, yeah.
Did you have anxiety and fear going into that comedic situation?
No, not at all. Actually, I didn't. No, maybe I should have. I think I didn't at all. But it's like, I look back at Equus. I did that when I was 17. I don't know how I did that. Like, I don't know. That is, I mean, you know, looking back, I go, Christ, that does take guts. Really like, it does. I don't know if I could do it now, my God. I mean, it was, yeah, I think that I've always, in my life, kind of baptism by fire has always been a very good way of doing stuff for me. Like, I mean, Equus, in terms of a first play, is quite a tough first play, and there's a lot to learn as you're going along. But yeah, so it's I don't know. And working with Ricky Gervais, you kind of can't ask for anybody better.
Woman in Black is not easy too because horror is a lot like comedy in that the timing needs to be really bang on.
Right.
Are you very secure about your ability to perform in any of these situations?
Yes, I don't really take it. I think because I don't really think of it by genre. You just take it by character and by the part, and that's kind of it becomes an easier way to start. Yeah, I mean, I think actually what's interesting is that in comedy, I think the timing is more down to the actors, whereas in horror, it's kind of more down to the director, and it's more down and the editor and the music and all that. So it's less. I think the timing of things is less my responsibility in this film.
It was very poetic at times, and I know that poetry is a big part of your story too, right?
Yes, people seem to be becoming aware of that very recently. Yeah.
But because it's a different way to say what you're thinking or what you're observing, or what does it allow you to do that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do?
I think as an actor, you know, you are creative in the way that you are, you know, responsible for creating a character and embodying that character, but you can't create a world. You know, you can't create a whole, and I love the challenge of poetry. Like, I love rhyme and meter and form and all those things are very, I think that it's like a mental exercise, which I really enjoy, but at the same time, it's allowing me to get stuff out. I haven't actually written a good poem in, I mean, about a year or so, but you know, I'll get back to it.
Your grandmother passed, right? Did you write one?
I did. How did you know that? I've obviously said that at some point.
Now, who knows you said it? Maybe I just found that out.
Maybe you're just an incredible researcher. You're like the Woodward and Bernstein of Canadian television.
But that's a very personal subject to write about.
Yeah, I mean, I write on all kinds of things. You know, relationships, stuff I found funny throughout the day, space. You know, anything. I like, you know, space I find fascinating.
We're gonna explore that. Stick around. Anthropology with Daniel when we return, and we'll find out actually if he had to choose between his movie and a Super Bowl.
That is a tough choice.
Harry Potter! Welcome back! Did you have a good summer?
No! Voldemort's returned and he's trying to kill me! Again!
I heard. We need Hermione. Is she here yet?
I got here hours ago. I've been in the library researching cloaking spells.
Saturday Night Live, to be on that is a big deal.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, we've been parodied a couple of times, and I got to host it as well, which was amazing.
Nice. Okay, so anthropology. What is it about space that fascinates you? Oh,
God, just the endlessness of it and the fact that every atom in our body was made in a dying star. That's pretty cool.
That's your new great poem, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Do you have a mentor? You know, as a young actor coming up, where the people are like, not family, but did another performer mentor you?
You know, Gary Oldman, I always looked up to Gary a huge amount, you know, and viewed him as just totally fearless and kind of everything I aspire to be, you know, and who wouldn't? you know, Alan Rickman was very, you know, would guide me and took me out for dinner a couple of times in New York after the show and talked to me about things, and he's always been very supportive. I mean, they all, luckily, you know, all the older actors that we had on the films were really generous with the kids and always, you know, were talking to us and including us in their process.
A few years ago, you were supporting Clegg's Liberal Democrats, and I think it's interesting when an actor or any artist finds their political voice. How would you counsel young performers to find their political voice?
You know, I'm not a member of the Liberal Democrats. Yeah. I'm you know, free swinging in that sense.
It just means he has unlimited options.
Exactly.
Political.
You know, but I don't know. I mean, I think you just have to. I think you have to be very careful. I think you have to. You know, I don't think you have to. I think if you're going to voice an opinion, I certainly don't think that you should think that your opinion is in any way more valid because you're an actor. It's not. You know, I am no more informed than anybody else who watches a lot of news and is interested in current affairs. But you know, I think when actors start to annoy people is when they start kind of preaching. So never do that. But just, yeah, I think you've just got to be. I think as little. One thing I've learned over the last kind of year and a half is that the smaller the difference between the public perception of you and your actual self, the better. Because that means I can come and do an interview like this and not feel like I'm hiding stuff, not feel I have to be aware of stuff, not feel, you know, and I can kind of be as natural as it's possible to be.
So, I mean, are you comfortable just naturally talking about the fact that you play fantasy football? Is that true?
Yes, that is. I'm extremely comfortable talking about that.
Are you one of the crazy fantasy football guys in a draft?
You know, we didn't do a draft this year because it was my first year. We're going to do it next year because I'm very excited about that.
But your movie opens on Super Bowl weekend.
I know.
And your favorite team is in the Super Bowl.
My favorite team is in the Super Bowl, the Giants. Yeah.
No Giants love here. Easy, all right.
So I'm very excited for them. I will be watching them. I will be. I'm a huge. You know, I love Eli Manning. Victor Cruz this year was on my fantasy team, so I did very, very well with him. I didn't do so well overall in the league, but he did brilliantly for me. So yeah, I'm a huge football fan now.
I went and watched The Artist last night. It's a beautiful film.
I'm sure I haven't seen it yet.
What was neat about it was in the background, the stars would be sort of hiding in the back watching the film. Not in a premiere setting, but as the audience watched. And I wondered, have you ever had that opportunity just to sneak into one of your films or and just watch it?
I don't know that I have. No, I mean, one of my favourite things to do always is, if I'm at a premiere, just to kind of pick someone and watch them, particularly if I know that there's a jump coming up or whatever, you know, that's quite fun to do. But no, I've never had that. I don't like watching myself at the best of times, so I certainly wouldn't if I didn't have to.
Right. It's a good place to be, probably.
Yeah, it's no fun watching yourself.
Make sure you watch him, then. If he won't watch himself, you should.
Yeah,
it's
you
called
have to.
The Woman in Black. It opens in theaters across Canada on February the 3rd. Daniel Radcliffe, everybody, we'll be right back. As the boy wizard became a man. So, how did he manage to stay sane in the midst of the worldwide Pottermania? Did he manage to stay sane? Well, apparently. And his parents deserve a lot of the credit. His dad quit his day job as a literary agent to shepherd his son through the madness. But it hasn't all been plain sailing for Daniel. Like many young men in his position, he has had some struggles, and then there's that question that hangs over every child actor. How do you carve out a career as an adult? Well, Daniel appears to be well on his way thanks to a string of very un-Potter-like roles. Broadway debut.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, mate.
How are things?
It's very good to be here. Very good. You know, in the middle of this kind of crazy press tour, but it's all good.
You know, if you get used to promoting a certain kind of film for any length of time, then to have to get into and talk about a completely different kind of film.
Yeah.
Is it a learning curve for you?
No, it's actually great. It's kind of really good fun to be talking about something that's not Harry Potter is quite refreshing.
But dude, you went the other way, man, because this film. So I would like to think of myself as a professional scary movie watcher. It's sort of it's how I go to sleep to the soundtrack of The Exorcist.
Wow.
There were a couple of times.
Tubular Bells is kind of awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
It also explains why I sleep alone. But in this moment, man, there were some real creep-out scenes in here. I was like, oh, this is a scary film.
There are. I mean, as I was saying to you before, James Watkins, our director, is a real... you know, I don't want to imply that he would ever be limited to the genre of horror, but he's incredibly good at it.
Over the last decade, the adventures of Harry Potter have become the epic myth of our time. And the most successful film franchise of all time. And at the eye of the phenomenon was Potter himself, Daniel Radcliffe.
Expecto Patronum! him!
At age 11, Daniel became the face of Harry Potter after he was spotted in a BBC production of David Copperfield. And over the course of 8 Potter movies, countless bruising stunts, and some big on-screen kisses, we watched as a disturbed young boy in Equus even bared all for the role. There was a horse.
Last year, he earned rave reviews in the Broadway musical How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying.
And now Daniel's back on the big screen in The Woman in Black.
Who's there?
They prey on those most in need.
Spooky.